Time for another chapter of Genre Files, and this time we are doing war films. War, kill. So before I get to that, let me show you what I did tonight. I went to the Art Theater here in Champaign, and I saw this film. It's an Ingmar Bergman film called Summer with Monica, and they're having this retrospective called Bergman in Three Acts. Three films on successive Mondays, and today was the first one. Next week it's Persona. And the week after that is Fanny and Alexander, both of which I haven't seen. I'd never seen Summer with Monica either, and it was really a terrific film. And I hope this poster was free because I grabbed it on the way out, but it's very nice, isn't it? So that's what I did tonight. Unfortunately, the next 2 Mondays I have things planned, so I probably will not be able to see these movies, but I do have Persona on DVD, so I can watch it at home. So anyway, it's kind of a cool thing going on here. Something else to hang up in my TV room. All right, so on to the genre for this week. I've chosen a film from 1943, right at the height of World War II, released by Paramount Studios. It's called So Proudly We Hail, which is another film that I remember watching way back in the 60s on the early show and just absolutely falling in love with the movies and these great actresses who were in this film. This has a slightly different focus than most of the war films. It focuses on the Army nurses who were on the front lines, specifically in this movie in the Philippines, Bataan, Corregidor, and it's based on true happenings. There was a book written by a Lieutenant Colonel Juanita Hips, and she had actually been at Bataan. She had survived. I guess it was a very tragic situation. A lot of men and a lot of nurses were lost as well. So this doesn't pull any punches. Now, of course, it's done to strike patriotism in people's hearts, and it certainly had what it takes to do that. So I love this movie very much. 3 great actresses of the era were starring in this film. Claudette Colbert, who was of course had won an Academy Award in 1934 for It Happened One Night. Second billed is Paulette Goddard, who was becoming very, very popular after early success with Charlie Chaplin, her husband, back in 1936 for Modern Times, and later on in The Great Dictator. Then she started doing some lighter films with Bob Hope, films like The Cat and the Canary and The Ghostbreakers, and she was becoming a very, very likable star, both dramatic and comedy. And for this film, she was nominated for Best Supporting Actress. She did a very good performance in this. And the third lead actress is beautiful Veronica Lake, who, of course, by that time was becoming a very, very popular star and a big moneymaker at Paramount for her film noirs with Alan Ladd. And this was a nice little departure for her as well. She has the most supporting role of this. She has even less screen time than Paulette Goddard, but she's seen to very good advantage here. Also, some very good actors. Some names you might recognize. There's some romantic situations going on between a couple of these women and soldiers. And Claudette Colbert is involved with a man who happens to be played by George Reeves, none other than George Reeves, who later on became Superman in the 1950s, and he was a very young actor. I don't think this was his first movie. I believe he was in Gone with the Wind. Somebody can correct me on that. I'm not sure. I should have looked him up because I don't know how many things he did before So Proudly We Hail, but I don't think it was his first movie. But he's very, very good in this. And another actor who was making his debut in this film, a name you might recognize, a guy named Sonny Tufts. That's Tufts. It's not easy to say. Sonny Tufts. He had been a football player at Yale University. He had studied opera, and he had a football injury which actually kept him out of the service. And I guess the opera thing didn't work out, so he came to Hollywood and he tried out for the movies and got a chance in this film. Became very popular overnight. In fact, he was called the Find of 1943 and went on to make several films at Paramount and up until the late 1940s, including another film with Paulette Goddard in 1944, because they really had good chemistry in this film. The film was called Ilvl Soldiers, directed by the same director, Mark Sandburg, who had directed So Proudly We Hail. And Sonny Tufts went on to do freelance movies after he left what am I saying? After he left Paramount, and he kind of struggled after that, and he started drinking very heavily, but he made a classic cult film which you all need to get on your shelves. It's called Catwomen of the Moon from 1953. And 2 years after that, he did a very good supporting role in a classic comedy called The 7-Year Itch. And unfortunately, he died very young. He died at the age of 58 in 1970. Now, Mark Sandrick, who directed this film, had directed a lot of films at RKO back in the 1930s. In fact, he directed several of the Fred Astaire, Ginger Rogers musicals, which were very, very big hits. Came to Paramount, where he had a chance to produce as well as direct. He directed the Holiday Inn. Try it again, Mike. Holiday Inn, starring Fred Astaire and Bing Crosby, which was a huge hit. Then he did this film, which was a big moneymaker in 1943. And he did a couple of other sort of lighthearted films at Paramount, including the one I told you about with Sonny Tufts and Paulette Goddard. And then he was working on a film called Blue Skies, which was going to reunite Fred Astaire and Bing Crosby. And he died very suddenly of a heart attack at the age of 44, so that's a very sad thing. But what else do I want to say about this? Let's see, they had music by Edward Heyman and Miklos Rosa. I don't know Edward Heyman very well, but Miklos Rosa did a lot of film soundtracks. Very, very beautiful and moving music in this film. A lot of supporting actors, many of whom were contract players at Paramount who showed up in this film. A lot of them, a whole bunch of female actresses they needed for the nurses. People like Dorothy Adams, Mary Treen, Anne Duran, who ended up being James Dean's mother in Rebel Without a Cause. Lorna Gray, who was an actress in a lot of serials at Republic. Just a very good film, very enjoyable and also very moving and very serious in a lot of parts because, after all this stuff was happening at the time this film was released. And I've babbled enough, so I'm done. Let me know if you've seen this and if anything you want to say about it. Thanks for watching.